Coding challenge review, intermediate level, 9th of January. So let's see what we get. First question, add the positive numbers. So we have an array of numbers, and essentially we want to keep the positive ones and then add them, right? So in that particular case, we want to add 3 and 5, not -1, because -1 is not a positive number. I can think about different ways to approach this problem. But I'm going to be a bit aggressive. I'm going to follow maybe not the most typical way to solve it, or maybe yes, I don't know. Well, we'll see in a minute once we compare against your results. But to me, the most powerful way. I'm going to use reduce. Have you ever heard about reduce? No? Yes? Some of you, right? So reduce is a very, very, very powerful method in JavaScript. And with reduce, we can iterate on a list of elements, and then we can do things, right? So, first of all, argument name. Number? Why? Numbers. Yes, that's one. Yeah. So we got the list of numbers. So we should call it in plural, right? So someone said positive number. What do you think about that? Not yet. That's correct, right? We may have negative numbers here. So positive number is not a good name, I believe. So let's simply call it numbers. And then, so we want to keep the positive number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to return numbers.reduce. So reduce accepts lots of parameters. We'll see in the long term how many arguments can we pass here. But for now, we'll focus on the first two arguments because are the common ones. So the first argument of the reduce is the accumulator. I'll rename that in a minute, but for now, I'll call it accumulator because that's the technical name of the first argument. So what's the accumulator? The accumulator is a special variable that keeps being sent from one iteration of the array to the other. Reduce is like map or like find, filter, for each. It will run the array, so it will execute the callback function for each element of the array, and on each iteration it will do something. So the important thing to note about the accumulator is that we can initialize it. That's not strictly necessary, but generally speaking, we're going to initialize the accumulator because we want to add some values. What do you think should be the default value of the accumulator? What? 0, that's correct. It's 0. If you want to add some numbers, what's the default value of the sum? It's 0, right? And then we may add some values, but by default, we have 0. And then, that's the important thing. So the way, let's simplify the problem. Let's add all the numbers regarding whether they are positive or negative, right? So let's simplify the exercise. So to add all the numbers, essentially, we can pass another argument, which is the current value of the array. So on the first iteration, the value will be 3. On the second iteration, the value will be -1. And on the last iteration, the value will be 5. So how would you call that second argument? Sum. I don't really like sum. So remember that this is not the sum. This is each individual element of the array. Number. I like that. If you have an array of numbers, then this will be an individual number, right? And then I agree, someone mentioned to use sum. I'm going to rename the accumulator with sum because that will give us a better feeling that this variable holds the sum of the values of the numbers of the array. So then essentially here, we just need to return. So whatever we return here, it will be assigned to the sum on the next iteration. So Can we do that? If we do that, right, let's review what the values will be. That will be probably the first and maybe the last time that I'm going to do that process by myself, because in the future I will ask you. So on iteration number 1, sum is 0, right? Because by default, sum refers to the default value. And the number is 3. That's the first number. So on iteration number 2, sum is the result of the first iteration. 0 plus 3. Sum equals 3. And number is -1. Iteration number 3. Sum is the result of the previous iteration. 3 plus -1 is 2. And number is 5. Is there any fourth iteration? It's not, because the array only has 1, 2, and 3 elements. So that's it. That will be the eventual value that will be returned. No, sorry, not that one. The result of adding these two, right? Because on the last iteration, we'll be returning sum plus number. So we'll be returning 2 plus 5 equals 7. So the result should be 7, right? And because we are returning the result of reducing all the values, that number 7 will be eventually returned. So if we test the example, which is not going to work, obviously, right? So this doesn't work, right? So there are some problems, and I believe the problems are because of the comments. That's my first theory. Let's try again. Correct, that was the only problem, right? So now you can see that the first example returns 7 because it's 3 minus 1 plus 5 equals 7. But we don't want that, right? We want to just keep the positive numbers. So we need to do some tricks here in this line. We want to add the number just if the number is positive. So we can do that. If number, who said that? Oh. If number is greater than 0, do we care if it's 0? We don't. Say it? Yeah, correct. So 0 doesn't hurt, right? If we add 0, well, so we don't care. 0 is not a big problem now. So if number is greater than 0, return sum plus number. If not, if the number is negative, return sum.
Can we put that all in the one line?
Yeah, we'll go there in a minute. Yeah, we'll simplify that, right? So let's see if that makes any sense. Yes, it does. It does make sense, right? So what that means? Let's guys, you'll tell me what's the value. Iteration number 1. What's the value of sum? It's 3. Wrong.
0.
Who said 0?
0.
Mo, that's correct. And whoever is Dave or Richard, you're right. The first iteration, sum is 0 because that's the default one, right? What's the value of number? 3, right? Iteration 2. What's the value of the sum?
3.
3, correct. What's the value of number?
-1.
-1, correct. Iteration 3. What's the value of sum?
3.
Is 3 or 2? Why 3? Correct. Because as on the iteration number 1, iteration number 2, number is a negative value, we go to the else. So essentially we are just passing the same value to the next iteration, right? So sum is 3, that's correct. What's the value of the number on the last iteration?
8.
It's 8. No, it's not 8. On the last iteration, number is 5.
The number is 5, yes.
Yes, correct. That's all right. So eventually, because there isn't any further iteration, what will this return? 3, which is the sum, plus number, which is 5. So that will return 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So that's probably my favorite way to solve the problem. But obviously, as I think Ashley suggested, we can simplify that a bit. Can we use a ternary operator? Okay, you tell me, how do we do that with a ternary operator? Return what? Number. What? Greater than 0. Then what? Yeah? Colon sum. Correct. That's correct. You see, even easier. Just 4 lines, right? What about? Yeah, correct. We can use filter. Yeah, that's fine. That's a different strategy. We can do that if you want now. I'll do that in a minute. So doing that, to me, this is a simpler solution because with the simple reduce, we are sorted, right? So with reduce, we are filtering and then we are adding. So we do both actions in one go. Can we get rid of the return statement here? Will this work, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? So Mo said yes. Interesting. So Jonan said no, get rid of the curly bracket. Mo, what do you think? He's right. He is right. Jonan is definitely right. So that won't work because that will return undefined or something like that, right? Because we are not returning anything. So if we get rid of the curly brackets, now that should work again. It doesn't work because what? What's what? Unnecessary 0. Not really. No. It's probably because of that, right? Semicolon, remember, inline expression, right? That's correct. Now that's correct. However, I don't really like that. You'll see that I'm repeating the same thing again and again and again. If you do that, please add parentheses. To me, this is much more readable because otherwise, look, what is that comma? That's a bit weird, right? It's hard to follow that what the snippet is doing. But if we add the parentheses surrounding the expression, then it becomes more readable now, right? Yeah, does it make sense? Yeah. Any question? Let's follow Megan's style. So what Megan was suggesting is first filter the positive values and then add them, right? Correct. That's absolutely valid. We'll learn how filter works, but filter is very similar to find. The main difference between filter and find is find will return just the first matching instance, but filter will return all the matching instances, which is what we want. We don't want to get the first positive value. We want to get all the positive values. So we can do numbers dot filter, and then we get a number. So we can keep all the numbers that are greater than 0, right? So that's the first step. Please keep the positive numbers, and then once we have the positive numbers, we can use reduce again to add them all. But now this algorithm will be simpler because we don't need to check that anymore, because we know that all the numbers will be positive. Because all the numbers will be positive, we can simply do that. And because this is so simple, we can even put it in one line.
Does filter create an array? No.
Filter returns a new array with the filter elements. So that's the same thing. And it works. Right? First, we filter the positive numbers and then we add them all. What happened? And I'm not going to give you the answer, but just think about that. If I remove comma 0, will it work, yes or no?
I think it will work.
Why?
I was watching mean that the start times are numbers.
No, that's not correct.
It's not necessary. I mean, it's not mandatory.
Okay, so what? Okay, fair enough. So if the thing is, if we put 0, I think we agree that the first value of sum is 0 because we put it here. If we put 12, the first value of sum is 12. But what happens if we remove 12? What's the value of sum?
0.
Why 0?
This is default.
That's not correct. 0 is not any default. No, that's not correct.
Yeah, it's undefined.
It's not undefined. I'm not going to give you the answer, but there are 3 extra points on the board. Challenge for the first one giving the right answer. Ha ha ha. Right, think about that. Cool. Yeah. So, anything else, guys? Right. So that was question number 1. Let me have a look to what you did. Add positive numbers. So MK, he used the filter thingy, and then he added all the values. So that's pretty much what we did. Yeah. So for example, my only concern here is the semantics of Mo are wrong, in my opinion, because he has the name of the variable is numbers. I buy that. I like that. But then the name of the argument is positive numbers. So this is wrong because of 2 reasons. First of all, it's singular. You got an individual number. So if you call it numbers, it's confusing. The second reason why I don't like this approach is because he's assuming that this is a positive number, and that's not true. That's not true. Eventually, positive numbers will be -1. This is mind-blowing, right? So we shouldn't be that specific unless we have a very good reason. Also, he's creating a variable here, and then he returns the variable. That's okay, but I believe we can directly return that expression straight away, right? Itamar, look, Itamar, this is very elegant, right? So Itamar, numbers, dot filter, and dot reduce. So this is literally the same thing we did a minute ago, right? So this is very good. So Daniel, that didn't work. Can anyone see why Daniel's solution didn't work? Because it looks quite good, to be honest. Let me zoom out a bit. I'll show you again. Yes. So ignoring the elegance issue. So why this doesn't work? It's pretty close, actually. No. No. It's not returning. Correct. Correct. So it didn't work for Daniel because he forgot to add a return statement here. But he was close. Then Poppy succeeded the filter. So do you think that line will be ever executed?
Yeah. No.
Okay, that sounds very convinced.
Yeah.
So the thing is, as soon as we add a return statement, that's it. The function is over. So this line will never ever run. So that's a bit unnecessary.
I think I was just testing it at that point with positive numbers to see if that bit worked. Because I did it in 2 steps.
Yep.
I didn't watch a video, so I was just trying to figure out how to do it. So that's
Okay.
just a bit different.
Yep. Yeah, so probably you got a penalty here for adding 2 unnecessary return statements, right? And then, yeah, so you see the problem, right? So your solution works fine because by coincidence, you have 2 positive numbers on each example.
Yeah.
As soon as we have a third positive number, or you have 1 positive numbers, or no positive numbers at all, that will fail, right? So this is not strong enough. So you did the filter thing correctly, you filtered the positive, but then you should use something like reduce to add all the positive values.
I'll do that next time.
Cool. Cheers. Then Megan, yes, she did the filter thingy and then the reduce. right? Interestingly, Megan is not adding any default value to the accumulator. So that means that essentially half of my question is already solved. Does it work without a default value? Yes, it works. Now you need to tell me what's the default value of A when we don't set up any default value at the bottom. So, Megan, first of all, why are you still using classic functions? Don't you like the? It's a habit. But you are very young to have this kind of old habits. I could do that, but you shouldn't do that. Cool. That's fine. That's fine. It's just simply you need to type more, right? So that's the thing. And then, so that you can defend that. What you probably can't defend that well is why you call argument names A and B, because I have no idea what A is. I have no idea what B is. You know, it's a bit stressful to understand that piece of code, right? So that should be called something like sum, total, something like that. And if you call that like a array of what? Of numbers, of booleans. So we'll work on the semantics to make sure that your code is a bit more readable, right? Right, and then we got Jav. So that's it. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. I really like that. I think this is very elegant, and especially in the expert training, that pattern will be mandatory if you don't want to get penalties on the elegance. So instead of putting all the logic in a single function, he created a couple of utility functions. So I love that. It's very, very readable, right? So here's a function called isPositive, return 0, and then another function getSum that adds all the values, right? So I think this is really good. However, do you think that you have got any elegance penalty here? The what, sorry? Here? Correct. Missing empty space. He got a penalty. Here. Here. No, it's one space. Oh. No, it's one space. It's a big space, so this is still one space. Right? However, he got probably another penalty here, right? There is no space here, Jeff. Right? But yeah,
Can you just explain how Millar's code works? Can you just explain?
The code.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing we did, but instead of putting everything in one function, he could do a few functions. So you can literally copy that and paste it here.
So that's true or false?
Yeah, correct. And then you can copy that and paste it instead of that. So that's literally what we did, right? So we can do that. So you can abstract, you can split logic into separate functions, right? So that's really good. It's very academic. I like that. And then we got rich. No, wait a minute. This is me. Then we got it. Oh, wait a minute. That's a separate question. No, that's a separate question. Okay, let's do the next question. Question number 2. Oh. I broke it. Yes. Thank you. Right. Question number 2. Get sorted array. Oh, interesting. We have an array of numbers and we want to sort the values. This is pretty easy once you know how to sort elements in JavaScript. First of all, argument name. How many arguments do we have? 3. 3, and then 4, and then 1, and then 2. Nice. It's the very first time we have to deal with a dynamic number of arguments. If we have 3 arguments, we can do value 1, value 2, value 3. But that's not the case, unfortunately, right? Obviously, you can do if I have value 2, then if I have value 3, but this is bullshit, right? In the long term, this won't scale. You can have 20 arguments. So, how do we transform a comma-separated list of arguments into something we can manage easily? The rest parameter, correct. There is a specific training on the intermediate that talks about rest parameter. right? I recommend you, once you start doing the training, to do that one, because this is one of the most interesting ones. Apart from that, we'll do a workshop about the REST parameter. But before that, essentially, you can do this modern JavaScript. You can do ... and then the name of the arguments. So that will gather all the arguments. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 20, it doesn't matter. It will gather all the arguments, and it will create an array, and a single array with all these arguments, right? So essentially, that transform 1, 2, 3 into 1, 2, and 3, right? And this is much better because as we have an array, we can deal with arrays easily. So, how can we sort elements in JavaScript?
Using the sort method.
Dot sort, correct? And then sort what?
Then
Parentheses.
Yep. So sort receives a function unexpectedly, right? As map, filter, as reduce, right? And then the function is a bit special. The function receives two arguments, number 1 and number 2. So it will compare all the values using a sorting algorithm like bubble sort, things like that. It will compare all the pairs, and then it will decide the order. So here, that condition, return, whatever we return here, that condition will decide the order. So that's important. If we return a negative value, like -1, that means that number 2 is greater than number 1. So then number 1 will go before number 2. If we return a positive value, it's on the other way around. Number 2 is I used to get confused. So let me put it, and then it will be easier to understand. So if we do that, right? So for example, let's have a look to the first example. Here we got 3, and then we got 2. So 3 minus 2 returns a positive number, right? So if the number is positive, that means that in reality, the second number is greater than the first number. So it will change the order. This is a bit confusing. I always struggle to explain that. But the thing is, I have a rule. Even though I struggle to explain that, I have a rule that works. So look at the rule. So here speaking, you put number 1 and number 2. Yes, you subtract these two values. So if you do that, the elements will be sorted from the minimum to the maximum. So,
Is that right?
yeah, that's it. If
number 1 is 3, number 2 is 2.
yeah, so then it will move yes. So if it's positive, it will change the order. Yeah. So yeah. So the thing is, so if you put it like that, right? So essentially, it will sort the array from the smallest to the biggest number. If you change the order, if you do number 2 minus number 1, it will sort the array starting from the biggest to the smallest number. Let's try the theory. Look, you see? This works because we want to sort the array from the smallest to the biggest number. But if we change the order, right, it will be on the other way around. You see? 6, 3, 2, 6, 4, 3, minus 1, right? So just to prove the theory, if we return a positive number, right, it will sort from biggest to the smallest. If we put a negative number, it will sort from the smallest to the biggest number, right? But the thing is, in our case, it's not either always positive or always negative. It depends on the pairs, right? That's why we need to put number 1 minus number 2. This is a bit confusing. At least to me, it's a bit confusing. But the more sorting you do, the more natural that will feel, right? So number 1 minus number 2, smallest to largest. Number 2 minus number 1, largest to smallest. Okay? Yeah.
Are you saying that category sort and parentheses?
Yeah.
Are you saying this function is implied, it's embedded?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So if you want to, that same saying, you've got to put it inside to reverse it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yep. And also, can we refactor that into an arrow function?
You say refactor it.
Yeah, I want to ES6, correct.
Alright, so get rid of the function.
Correct.
Alright, get rid of the curly braces.
Yeah.
Put an arrow, the arrow.
Yeah.
And then get rid of the return statement.
Yeah.
Put it all in one line.
Yeah.
Then the
Hmm.
Wait, can we have one more parenthesis at the end?
Yeah.
And remove the curly braces.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That's correct. That's the same, right? So numbers dot sort, number 1, number 2, and then number 1 minus number 1, minus number 2, sorry. Because this line is too long, my suggestion is, remember, every time you deal with arrays, before dot sort, dot find, dot filter, dot map, dot for each, dot reduce, dot whatever, break line, tab, right? That's a bit more readable. Right? And that obviously still works. And now a question for you. Do we need now the parentheses? Do we need them? No. I don't know. That feels wrong, right? That feels... These kind of things in life that you don't know why, but it feels wrong, right? It's one of these, right? So I mentioned yesterday that parentheses are optional if you have a single argument. But if you have more than one argument, they are mandatory. If we remove the parentheses, it will blow up, right? But if we put the parentheses, it works. Any question? No? Yep.
You said parentheses are optional have more
No. One.
you've only got one.
Yeah.
In any kind of function.
We'll talk about arrow functions. Yeah. With a classic function, you always need a parenthesis. Yeah.
And I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Where you've given sort and you've given number 1 minus number 2, can you have other operators?
Here. I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure if there is an index as a third.
No, not there. After the arrow.
Here. Yeah, obviously that condition could be more complicated, of course. So here we could return, so let x equals blah, blah, blah. So we could do a few things, absolutely. And then eventually we could return something, right? So this is what I discussed with Mo yesterday. Right? Mo, do you remember we discussed that yesterday? This is an arrow function that doesn't immediately return anything. It opens curly brackets because we want to do some pre-processing, whatever is going on here, and eventually at the end, then we'll return something, right? Anything else, guys? No? So let's check your solutions. So get sorted array. So Mo, that's very interesting. So he used sort, but he didn't do anything, right? And in that particular case, that works because JavaScript is smart enough to sort numbers, right? So if you have a list of numbers, you can do that. As soon as you don't have a list of numbers, because you have a list of objects, a list of functions, a list of whatever, this won't work. JavaScript is only able to sort simple things, right? But again, that's nice. It's very, it's very elegant. Then Itamar, right? So again, this is similar to what Megan did before.
Yeah.
Even though that's correct, I hate the naming convention, right? Array of what, right? AB, what's AB? Number, string, boolean, right? So let's work on semantics, right? And then Daniel, same as Mo, so that numbers dot sort.
I did keep it as source originally, and it wasn't. Maybe I had something else.
Yeah.
Right.
So the strategy is correct. Look, so you create an array, and then you sort, but that's the issue. Here is where instead of doing math.max, we should have a callback function to compare the different values, right?
You've got two return statements again now.
Oh, that's true. We didn't notice. Yes. Again, Poppy.
Yeah.
Right. So this essentially this won't even run at all, right? It
Yeah.
will simply return the array. And then Megan.
Yeah, I cheated.
Whoa. Oh. Right. So this is what I mentioned at the beginning. That could be okay, but
Yeah.
that will easily break, right? As soon as we change the data model, that will clearly break. Right. And then we got ASL again, array.sort. And I think that's pretty much it. Cool. Question number 3, I believe. Yes. That's interesting. Get merge arrays. I think there are a few ways to do that. First of all, how many arguments do we have? We have what?
2.
3. 2. Multiple. Multiple what? Multiple like that?
Multiple arguments.
Multiple arguments. No, I don't agree. No, we don't have multiple arguments. Well, we have multiple, but we know the exact number of arguments we have, right? We have 2. Yeah, we have 2 arguments, right? Look, we receive 2 arrays, right? It's pretty obvious. Right? So, cool. How do we call the arguments? Array 1, array 2. Do we care if they are numbers or not? Not really, right? We don't want to add them. I think it's, in that case, it's acceptable to call them array 1 and array 2 because there's nothing to do with numbers, booleans, strings. It's just 2 arrays. We don't care what type of arrays we have, right? So then, how can we join 2 arrays, right? We have one array, we have another array. So essentially, we want to have as a result, just 2 arrays, one after the other, right? So, there are a few ways to do that. Again, I will use my favorite one because it is very modern and very simple, which is the REST operator. So with the REST operator, because we want to return an array, I'll do that first and then I'll explain that. We can do that. That's it. No, wrong. That's it. So what's going on here? We have array 1. So with the ... remember, we'll do a workshop about that. But the ... is the REST operator. Essentially, is the combination of 2 types of operators. First of all, is the gather operator. When you declare it here, it gathers all the arguments. But here, when it applies on an array, it works on the other way around. It spreads. So it has the array, and it generates a comma-separated list of arguments. In other words, here, if we have 1, 2, 3, it transforms it into 1, 2, and 3. Because of that, essentially, we are creating 1, 2, 3, and then 6, 4, 3, whatever, right? So we are creating 2 comma-separated lists of arguments, right? And because we surround them with an array, that's it, right? It's as simple as that. So this is probably the simplest way to do it with modern JavaScript. Right? Questions? You can concat. That's a good point. Let's try a different strategy. So we got array 1. Say it again. I don't know. Let's see what happened. That works. Why you're not allowed to concatenate a string arrays?
Because the instruction says please use.
Okay. Right. Okay. So sorry. Yes, I didn't. Yeah, you're right. Itamar is technically speaking right. So I didn't read that. So the exercise is explicitly asking you to use the rest parameter. Yeah, that's correct. But ignoring that, yes, we can use concat, right? So concat means take one array and then concat another one, right? It works. But yes, so for trying to be strict.
Could you just do it? Just what if instead of 2 arrays you had like one set of 3 arguments and 1 array?
Correct. Let's do that. That's a really good example. Let's do that. So what our friend Jonan is asking is, what happens if we create a new snippet and we add the curly braces, as we already know, and then our function is called concat. So the way we're going to invoke this function in the following way. So we'll do concat. So you said how's the you have
like 2, 3, 4. So not in an array, but arguments.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And then
1 array.
4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Ah.
No? Was that not what you were thought?
So technically speaking, and I don't think this is supported yet by JavaScript, but that will happen. You could do, no, this is not going to work. But ideally, you should do that. Right. You see, that's not so. But so that's not supported by JavaScript yet. Yeah. However, what is actually supported is on the other way around. This is supported. Oops. Right? So that's actually supported. Right? So here we say, hey, the first argument is an array. And then everything else, gather. Yeah. Correct, gather. So in reality we'll have 2 arrays. Because we have 2 arrays, we can return array 1, array 2, but again using the rest operator. So that should exactly give us an array of 6 elements, right? So why? Because array 1 is an array, so that's fine, but array 2 is not an array, so we need to use the rest operator to gather all these 3 values into an array, because now we have 2 arrays, 1 array of 3 elements, 1 array of 3 elements, then we can spread them, and we can spread the other ones, and then we can surround them with an array, so they just returns an array. Right? It's pretty clever, yeah. But as I said, it works in that way, but not on the other way around. So if we had to solve it, something like that, no, we'll need to do a trick. If that's what we have, you will need to gather them all. We need to do something weird. We need to do let proper or actual array equals I don't know. I'm not going to do that now, but we need to get the last one and then splice the other, something like that, right?
Could you put like
Yeah.
element 1, so like in the at top?
At the top
A, B, C.
here.
Yeah. A, B, C. And then you do the rest operator for the array over there, so you spread it. So dot array. And then you join them together.
But what's the point of using the rest operator here? You already gathered. You have all the values in one.
No, you can break it. You can break that array.
No. But it doesn't work here. Then, if that's what you want to do, you need to do return A, comma B, comma C, and now you spread them.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then you join it together.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, you can join them if you want, yeah? Join. So if I join with more, now I will have a very sexy string, 1 more, 2 more, 3 more, right?
No, but that worked, did it?
No, but that works because we are assuming that we always have 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. If now we do that, then what? Wrong. Wrong. Right? That's why it will require some thinking how to do it. Cool. That was a good test. So, okay. Right. So this back to the challenge. We've got 13 minutes left. So any question regarding the array thingy? No? Okay. Yeah.
When you see concatenation.
Yeah.
And you still got the right answer, but it didn't throw you out because you used.
No, because we cannot control. This is just an advice. Please use the rest operator. But if you ignore that, that's fine. Yeah. In the future, we would like to improve that. See, if we ask you to use the rest operator, if you don't use the rest operator, you'll get a penalty. But today, you can cheat a bit. So let's see if you cheat or not. Generally speaking. So merge array, so more. You see, that's literally what we did. Fine, right? Itamar, that's interesting. You created a variable and then you return it. So you can return it straight away, right?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I did Google the answer.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I found.
Yep. Yep.
I didn't think too much about the fact that I created a value
Yeah.
variable, but
Yeah.
when you showed me the example, I did understand.
Yeah.
Wait, I should have just returned it straight away instead of
Okay.
the
Cool.
answer I found.
Cool. Yeah. Cheers, Itamar. What else? So Megan. You see, so Megan did something different. So what Megan did is to so she iterated on the second array, and then for each element of the second array, she pushed it to the first one. That's interesting, but that has an issue. The issue is you are modifying the first array. So if you created a function, get merge arrays, and I'm sending you an array, 2 arrays, once the array comes back to me, you've modified, right? So we should try not to modify the data. If I send you an array, if I send you a function with 2 arrays, I want to be able to deal with the same arrays afterwards, right?
Also, JavaScript doesn't pass by value.
Pass what?
Doesn't pass by value.
No, it does pass by value. It depends. We'll learn these things. So depending on the type of data, the data is passed by either by value or by reference. If you pass a number, the number is passed by value. That means that even if you modify the value, that's fine. But if you pass a complex data like an array or an object, we need to be careful not to modify, right? So the technical way to describe that, this is an impure function. It's impure because it's modifying the data. Generally speaking, we should try to create pure functions.
Change the input.
Exactly. That's it.
Is there some way to do it in a pure way without using the dot?
Not really. So here the key is push. Push modifies the array. That's why we should try to avoid using push. And finally, because we got probably 10 minutes left, so question number 4. Count the capital letters. Cool, so we have a sentence and we want to see how many capital letters do we have. I like this example because the pattern we're going to follow here is very typical. Every time we have a string and we want to count something or to check something, and eventually we want to return a string or a number or something like that, the pattern is the same thing. The first thing to do is to transform the string into an array. Why? Because arrays are probably the most powerful data structure in JavaScript. So if you transform whatever you have into an array, then you have a lot of flexibility to deal with the array. So do you know how to transform a string into an array?
How to transform string?
Yeah, so Megan got it. Can you repeat that, Megan? Split, that's correct. So with split, here, we specify how do we want to transform the array. I'll give you an example. If we have a string, hello world, if I do dot split space, it will chop the string by the space. So that will return hello world. Make sense? What happens if I split by E?
Then you won't be split by the space, you'll be splitting by the E.
Yes, correct. H. Correct. Right? And what happens if I split by OR?
Hello, W.
That's correct. Hello W. And the second one? LD. LD, right? So this element will be sacrificed, right? That's why, I mean, this is it's a weird example, but that's a typical one, huh? Right? And then, what happens if I do that? That's the important question, because we'll be doing that most of the time. What happens if we split with an empty string?
Then you split each letter.
Correct, 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 correct. So here we do that, and so on. That's what we want, because we want to analyze each individual character to see whether it's capital or not.
Does it keep the spaces?
Yes. Yes. So one element will be a space. That's correct. Every individual character, right? Cool. So we split, we do that, and then you see the strategy. I add a break line before every dot, because that will help readability. So now I want to iterate over this array of characters to count how many capitals do we have. I'm going to use reduce again, right? Because we use reduce at the beginning. So with reduce, what's the first argument? Do you remember? First argument, sum. I mean, the thing is, what? It's the accumulator. The technical name is the accumulator, right? We'll rename it in a minute. I don't like the name accumulator, but that's the technical. So if you don't know if you cannot think about the good naming conventions, let's call it accumulator for now, right? And what's the second name? What's the second argument? Value. You can call it character, right? That will be an individual character, right? Yeah. So it will be H, then E, then L, blah blah blah, right? What's the default value? 0. I like that, Yonan. I like that. Why? Because we want to count them. Whenever you want to count, the default is 0. Can we rename accumulator already? Count. Yes, I like that. How many capitals? Count. I like that. Right? So then, if, oops, then do something. So, if the character is a capital, then I will return count plus 1. I'll increase the counter. And what happens if the character is not a capital? Correct. If it's not a capital, yes. Yeah, that's the idea. And now, here, that's the important thing. How do we know if a character is a capital or not? Correct. Correct. That's correct. That's correct. So, H. So now the thing is H equal to capital H? It's not, because JavaScript is case sensitive. Is capital A equal to capital A? Yes. We'll increase the counter. Right? So that's the strategy we are trying to follow, right? We got just 4 minutes, so I will try to speed up a bit. So will this work, yes or no? No, why not, Megan? We need to return, we are returning, right? So we are returning the count here. So that's correct. I mean, that may work, I don't know, I'm just checking. definitely will work, right? I think Itamar is a bit optimistic today. I don't think that will work. I think it's close. I think the strategy is correct, makes sense, blah, 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 but there is a subtle issue. Let's try that. Let's see if it works or not. You see, it doesn't work. It doesn't throw any error, any elegance penalty, but look, oh, what? 4? Are you kidding me? Why 4?
It happens to me, I looked it up, so
Why?
it's count the space.
Correct.
And the space
A
has
space, you don't have capital spaces, right? So we need to control, oh yes, you see, that was, it's not obvious, that's not an obvious thing. So we need to change the condition, right? So technically speaking, we can do character is not an empty space, and yeah, we can do that, right? If the character is not an empty space and the character is the same as the character, add 1. Otherwise, and then boom, it works, right? Then it works. So this is a typical example where I will personally refactor that a bit because this is a bit long, right? So for example, ternary operator, right? Oh no, before ternary operator, I'm going to follow Jav's style. So I'm going to create a function called isCapital. So isCapital will receive a character, right? You see? So then I can simply move all this complex logic, look, let's cut it and paste it there. Right? So then you see the way we decouple the code, right? We are moving the complexity to a new function. So we are reducing the complexity. This function is quite complex already, right? But now we are delegating part of the complexity to a new function, right? And that still works. And finally, 2 minutes, guys, no pressure. Ternary operator, return what?
You can't remove the operator.
So it'll be parentheses.
Yeah? No. Why? I want to refactor that into a ternary operator expression.
Turn
Is capital, correct? Then what?
Count plus 1,
Com plus 1.
and then colon count.
Correct. That's correct. That's correct. Right. So then we can probably even put it in one line, maybe. Oh. May work, right? And that means we can even get rid of the, yeah? Even easier, right? Remember the parentheses, right? Parentheses here and parentheses there. Oh, you didn't return anything. Okay, let me put the, yeah, yes, we got 1 minute. Okay, let's ignore the inline return because we got 1 minute. We don't have time to debug it now. But yeah, but that works, right? That works. And yeah, I think that's pretty elegant. And then if we remove the default value, time out, just in time. Right? It's interesting because Megan removed it, it worked for her. Now I remove it, it didn't work for me. So that means that it, yeah, it's either she's a special, right, or something else is going on. I don't know, or both, right? I don't know. Yes, think about what happened when you declare the default attribute. And very quickly, yes, let me check what you did here. And we'll be calling it today. So Mo, so interesting. He first of all, he used a regular expression to get rid of the spaces. And then because he doesn't have any space anymore, he's filtering the capitals. That's interesting as well, right? Instead of reducing, he's filtering, right? So he's just keeping the capitals and eventually he's just returning the length, right? Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Then Itamar, you see, I like that because it's very easy to follow. Sentence split, so we have an array of sentences. Then he joins them again, so we don't have. So he's getting rid of the space, I believe. Okay, interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. Then he split again to have a list of individual characters, and then he keeps the capitals. And then he joins the capitals, and then he gets the length. Technically speaking, this is not necessary, Itamar. because you can get the length of the array,
Or
right? So that step is unnecessary, but that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, I like that. You see, it's like a chain of actions. It's very readable. That's a good thing. I like it, Itamar. And then Megan, C use for each again. So C declares a variable, and then C creates an array of individual characters. So C iterates on the array of characters. So if each individual character is capital, C increases the array. Yeah, that's very academic again. And last question. Yeah, no, I'm going to leave that question, the last question. Well, someone wanted to do the last question, right? Okay, let's do that. Let's do that in DevTools, guys, quickly. So we have a function called remove characters. And remove characters receives how many arguments? 2. Correct. So it receives 2 arguments. First of all, that's a string, and then, I don't know, blacklist or something like that, right? So we have a string, and we want to remove these characters out of this string, right? Correct. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to transform the string into an array of characters. So that will be string dot split, and then what? Like that? No space, that's correct. Because with no space, I will have an array of individual characters, right? And then I'm going to do something. I would like to filter. I'll do something here, and eventually, how do we transform an array into a string? Join, correct. What do we put here?
inside there we put what we would want to join it.
Correct. So what do we want to put to join the array? Nothing, like that.
No, like we got apostrophe.
Apostrophe.
Yeah.
Correct. So that's correct. You have an array. So essentially we're concatenating the elements of the array. So now you see I'm not following a chronological order. I am first of all creating the structure of the test. Because for me now it's easier to detect any, for instance, any missing semicolon, things like that, because the snippet is quite simple. And then eventually I'm narrowing the problem. I'm focusing on the complex part. So filter, what do we receive as an argument in the filter?
It would be not blacklist, so exclamation mark.
No, wait, this is a callback function, right? So what's the argument of the callback function using ES6? Word? It's not a word.
Yeah.
It's a character.
Okay.
It's an individual, right?
Yeah.
Look, string.split, so we'll have individual characters, right? And then we simply need to decide whether a character is included or not. Is A included? Yes, because it's not listed here. Is exclamation mark included? No, because it's blacklisted. Is B included? Yes. Is exclamation mark included? No. Is C included? Yes. Right? You see the pattern, right? Fortunately, with modern JavaScript, we can use something very interesting, which is the includes method. So we can use an array. Blacklist is an array, right? So we can do blacklist dot includes character. So that will return true if the character is included here. That will return false if the character is not included here. So what do you think this snippet will return? Exclamation mark. True. That's correct, Mo. That's correct. It will work on the other way around. Let's try that. Because we are... Oh, wait a minute. Because of the equal. Sorry. Yeah, I don't want to compare it. I just want to return it. Yes. So that's correct. You see? Mo was right. So we want to reverse the condition. How do we invert the condition? Correct. You see? The way to read that is keep the character A if A is not included here. So if we test that again, A, B, C. Will it work if we have multiple elements in the blacklist, like B? What will that return? AC. That's correct. AC. And what happens if we have that? What will this return?
An empty array.
An empty array. Wrong.
Null.
Null. Wrong. So, Poppy.
I don't know. Sorry.
All right. Anyone else?
What if it just returned with a string with nothing written inside of it?
An empty string. That looks correct to me. Let's try that. Let's try that. That's correct. Itamar is correct. Why? Because filter will find nothing, right? So do you remember what happened when find was unable to return anything? What was returned by find when nothing was undefined? That's correct. That's correct. What happened when filter doesn't return anything? Correct. Correct. Empty array. Why? Why not undefined? Because filter will always return an array. So if there are no elements that match the condition, then we still know it's an array, even if it's an empty array, but that's an array. But with find, what do we return? An array, a string, a boolean? We don't know. We don't know the type of data we're looking for, right? That's why filter is a bit more consistent from a data typing point of view, right? So filter will return an empty array. So if you take an empty array and you join it with an empty string, it will return just an empty string.
We can't just sort of like say at the moment we set up remove characters, it's a string and then it's an array.
Yep.
Yeah, if you still only had an exclamation mark but it was a string.
Correct. Like that.
Yeah, exactly.
What will this return?
Blacklist is no longer an array.
That's correct.
ABC.
ABC. Why ABC? It's not an array anymore.
Okay, I see. So
You're not allowed to do the includes to it.
I don't know. Technically speaking, you are allowed to use includes with a string. So in other words, Mo was right. That still works. So you can do that.
Okay.
That's the same thing. You see? So includes, it works with arrays, but it also works with strings. Right? We'll learn probably in the last week of the bootcamp, on the 27th or 28th of February, something like that, we'll learn why. This is because of the prototypal inheritance. This is how JavaScript works under the hood, right? We'll learn all these things towards the end of the bootcamp. But for now, just bear in mind that includes works with arrays and it also works with strings. So, any question? No? Lim? Yep. Yep.
what I intended to say was put in front of a character inside the
What did
inside the parentheses.
here?
Will that work?
No. That doesn't make any sense.
Can you say to one?
No, because if you put the exclamation mark here, you are negating a string, which is something a bit exotic, right? So if I have a variable called foo, so let name equals foo. So if we negate name, we got false. So essentially you are saying that blacklist includes false, which doesn't make sense, you know. So the thing is that the exclamation mark should be here. In reality, that surrounds everything, right? If not, blah, 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 everything else, right? Anything else?
Can you check mine as well?
Say it again.
Can you check why mine was wrong?
-1.
Mine was wrong. My
Yeah, we'll do that now. Yeah, sure. Let's have a look to your solutions. So first of all, Itamar, right? So Itamar, he did literally the same thing, right? Split, filter, join. I'm still not sure why you are using double quotes. It feels a bit, I don't know. Maybe it's something very personal, but I find it's harder to read than single quotes, right? Anyway, then Megan, whoa. Okay, you know. No, let's do something, Megan. Let's add some breakpoints. We learned to add breakpoints, right? So let's use our know-how to solve the problem. So that doesn't work, you said, right? So let's add an exclamation mark, and let's see what you return at the moment. Hey, it works. Okay. So you mean that if I add A, it will fail? It works. No, it doesn't because of the exclamation mark, you see? So it takes the last one, so it removes the last one, but not the first one, right? So, characters. Oh. I think I know why. Let's add a breakpoint, right? I'm not convinced, but I can smell where the issue is. So I'll add a breakpoint in the middle, more or less, right? Divide and conquer. So split array, A, B, blah, 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 blah. That's correct. Char string. Char string is wrong. What's that comma? Right? So, you know what I mean? Well, but even if that shouldn't matter, that's a smelly. Yeah. To me, okay, I'm sure you can handle that, but right. So then we continue with and then split array. So you see the split array is wrong already because you are not adding the A. So wait a minute, I need to run that again. That's not that easy to debug. So essentially you say if char string, if it includes the letter A, I know you remove, split array, so you remove it. Okay. So the thing is, she says, if that includes the letter, which is true, so now line number 7 should run. Correct. No, that's because you are removing. Yes, that's yeah. I know what's going on. So you have a loop. I'll show you. You are iterating, right, on split array, but then in the middle of the loop, you are modifying the size of the array, right? So something was on index 0, but after you remove it, now index 0 points to a different value, right? So we shouldn't really, modify the array, right? You could use a slice. I mean, definitely we could solve that, right? Splice is very aggressive because a splice modifies the array, right? But hopefully you've seen that there is a much simpler way to do it with includes, right? Cool. Guys, anything else? I think we are a bit out of time.
From the answer to your reduce why if we don't reduce as
Okay. Okay, let me stop that and we can discuss this later. Cool. Yes, cheers guys, thank you.